What is up, everyone? Today we've got something a little bit different. In the frame here you can see a PAR can. To be a little bit more specific, this is a Showtec LED 1-watt RGB PAR64 can from approximately 12 years ago. So this guy is a very old LED PAR can, right from sort of the beginning of LED PAR cans. So if we take a look in the end here, we have got 24 LEDs total. There's 8 red, 8 green and 8 blue. They're all 1 watt, so this, even by today's standards, this is still quite a bright can. Obviously, one thing that sets it apart from the majority of LED PARs on the market these days is the fact that it's in a classic PAR64 long nose can. Everyone discovered a few years after these were released, or all these kind of fixtures, there was loads of them by all the manufacturers. Everyone kind of discovered that it didn't really need to be this long anymore. So they took the back part and they took the front part and whoosh, squished them together, and now pretty much any LED PAR is fairly flat. This guy is not mine, it's from work. We own 12 of them, and they're a little bit special to me because these were the first ever LED PAR cans that I used. So these were purchased in around 2007 or 2008 at work, and I begun there in late 2008, and these guys were already installed. So all 12 of them were installed at front of house, and although PAR cans aren't ideal as front of house light, as time went on, I just used them more and more for tab warmers, and now they're pretty much used exclusively for tab warmers, and they do a fantastic job. They're used every single day because we warm the tabs for cinema use as well. So they are run for hours and hours a day between all of the shows and everything. So it's it's still quite heavy use for these guys. So like I said, we've got 12 of them, and they've all been problem free. I haven't touched any of them other than cleaning. I haven't done anything to them in all of this time. But now this guy, the fan has started to growl. So what I want to do in this video, I want to dismantle it, take out the fan, see what fan it is, order as close as I can get to that spec fan as a replacement, replace it, see if it's quiet enough, then order a further 13 or 14 fans to keep as spare stock. What I'll probably do is replace the fans in all 11 fixtures, so gradually over the next few months take them down, replace a fan, put them up, do them in like groups of 3 or 4 or something, and I'll get through all 12 pretty quickly. They all need to come down for a clean anyway. This one has had a quick cleaning after being taken down. As I said, these are special units to me because they were my first kind of look at any form of intelligent lighting. Before I used these guys, I just used generic rigs. So I just used basic desk, dimmers and Fresnels, standard PAR cans, floods, profiles. I hadn't had a go at anything remotely intelligent. So to get these DMX'd, 7 channels each, and being able to RGB colour mix them and do strobe, and they also have, you can remotely activate the sound active mode from the desk and stuff. So all of that stuff blew my mind back then, and it's really kind of what piqued my interest in everything that I'm interested in today with lighting. So even though these fixtures are quite dated now, they still are very special to me, and we have no real need to replace them with anything newer at the moment. As I say, they just do tab warming duty. Their biggest drawback really is the dimming curve, because obviously with the early LEDs it took them a little while to nail the dimming. So the curve of the dim isn't too bad, but it's when you get into the lower region, so anything 30% and below kind of sucks. You can see the flicker, and also it snaps off pretty dramatically. So even to this day, the latest LED products, they all somewhat snap off. None of them have quite a nice warm fade to black as a generic light, but these are 10 times worse than what you'll see today on the market, because they really have improved the dimming curve. Also, they've done a lot with LED PARs over the last 10-12 years. I guess one of the biggest things now is they've started adding different colours into the colour mixing palette. So these are just RGB. You can't really get a decent white with them, but since the release of like RGBA and RGBW fixtures, and you know, in the case of hex LED PARs, you've got RGBA, W and UV all in one PAR can, you can do gorgeous colour mixing with those kind of lights. RGB out front tab warmers, 12 of them, still going strong. Let's take a look at it and see what we can do in terms of dismantling, and see if we can get to the fan, because it's making one hell of a growl. And before we do that, actually, what I'll do is pop a plug on this guy and we'll take a listen. The way that these are wired in work is 4 of them. There are 4 per bar, there are 3 bars, and they are all sort of, there's like a junction box on the bar, and they're all hardwired in because they're not on IWBs, so that nothing is socketed, it's all sort of hardwired. So yeah, that's pretty nasty, and it makes it very difficult when you want to take fixtures down. That's one thing I'm hoping to change quite soon. But anyway, let's pop a plug on this and see if we can recreate the dodgy fan sound. Let's take a little listen, and straight off, let's see if we can tell that the fan is dodgy. So I can hear the unit buzzing, but I can't hear the fan. That's a good example of what these haven't got as well. You'll see that newer LED fixtures don't cause this flicker effect in cameras, but these do, because they're the older kind. So I'm not sure if it's a controlled fan. I believe it spins constantly. Aha, here we go. She started up. Okay, so I'm going to shut up for a second. Hopefully you guys will be able to hear it. So it's not much on its own, but it does get worse. Here you go, she's really picking up now. And in a quiet venue, doing a quiet part of a film or a quiet part of a show, that is horrific. And in fact, since I've taken this one down, there's a difference. Yeah, since I've taken this one down, I've noticed another one has started doing it. When we made the transition to digital projection in 2013, a lot of the electrical infrastructure was changed in the building, and since 2013, all of these guys receive permanent power. So 24 hours a day, they're powered up. Now, that's not really ideal, because if the fans aren't controlled, which I don't think they are, I could be wrong, but I don't think they are, because I've heard them going when light hasn't been on in ages. Those fans are spinning 24 hours a day, so that's what's killed them quicker. All of the equipment related to the projection alternation system is powered on 24 hours a day, because it just means that it's less stuff for people to forget to turn on. And also the way that it's kind of set up now, it's difficult for everyday staff to power these on and off. Again, it's probably something I would change if we could rework the general infrastructure, but obviously cost and everything comes into play. So for now, all I'm going to do is replace the fans, and we'll see how far we get with that. Hopefully the replacement fans I get will last a good few years, because if I have to do this all over again in a year or two, that would be a pain. So I want long lasting fans if I can. So the arse end of it lifts off just like a normal PAR can. In a standard PAR can, a PAR64 or whatever, you'd see the back of the lamp here, and you'd disconnect the lamp connector and then you'd have access to the lamp. But here it's slightly different. It's held in with a screw, and you can see that all of the DMX is back there on that board with the dip switches and the input-output. And then here is the power supply, the transformer, and we have also got, well, what looks to be just like a long shaft potentially heatsink or something, or just casing, what I'll do is I'll see what cables I can disconnect to get this back bit completely off, and then we can focus just on the can itself. So this isn't actually going to come apart very easily, so what I think may be a better approach is undoing the screws along the edge of the can here and seeing if we can slide the assembly out of the can itself, because from what I can gather they are two separate pieces and they're just screwed together. So that may be the option, that may be how we reveal the fan, and just let this float here for a second. So folks, my theory was correct, but first I've got to take out these additional bolts that would hold the yoke in place in order to get the assembly out of the can. So here is the assembly out of the can. And it's quite an impressive piece of engineering, really. It's substantially built, you know, say what you will about Showtec, but I've never ever really had an issue with their products. I know a lot of their products are built by other people and the Showtec label is slapped on top of it, but I own a load of Showtec stuff, and for the most part I've been really happy. So you guys can see the individual LEDs here. Just there's the board in there, and they've all got sort of domes on them. I guess you'd call them reflectors. They are little reflectors, all of them, which is cool. And then the fan on top, which is quite a sizable fan. That looks like a 60 or an 80 mil, so we may have more fan options than I initially suspected. The cool thing about this is I can see now that when I do dismantle these to replace the fans, I can see that I can get right in, I can deep clean the entire fixture and hopefully give them another lease of life, and give the new fans a fighting chance of being reliable. Not too much dust caked in the fan itself, actually. It's fairly clear. Where is it plugged in anyway? It's going up there. It's coming round. Ah, there's a dedicated connector. So underneath here, on the circuit board, you guys can see bottom corner over there. Top left of the frame is the fan connector, and then you can see that ribbon cable where it interfaces with the DMX. So it looks like we are going to have to delve into this front assembly. Now there are screws all over the front end of the fixture here, but as you can see, like this screw here simply is holding these two sections together, but some of the screws that look identical at first glance have these long standoffs that are actually screwing the front of the light, like holding it together. You can see there as well. So we may only have 3 of those, maybe 4 of those. Let's have a little look. Here's the top layer, or the front layer, and I'm glad I didn't take out any of these little screws, because it literally just holds these two layers together, and if I did, all of these would come loose. So we could actually probably get a bit more brightness out of this fixture by cleaning these reflectors, because they are fairly dirty. A lot of dust is coming off them in my hands. And then we've got the board of LEDs itself, which has this sort of cooling backplate on it. I wouldn't go as far as to say it's a heatsink. The fan blows directly onto the metal, Of course, the heat is dissipated on this back plate, through this back plate, but there's just sort of these louvered holes. It's not exactly heat fins. Okay, so here's the fan portion revealed, and question is, I can't actually see, but let's have a look. Are the screws indeed in this side? Yes, they are. Are they? Yes. So, by using a funky tool, this may be doable without removing the front end of the fixture. Such funky tool would be this guy. So, what I'm thinking is when the fan is in place like this, you could probably, at a pinch, get him out with this guy, or possibly not, depending on how awkward these screws are going to be. Yeah, you could do it, folks. You could upgrade this without taking the front end off. It would be tedious with this tool, but you could do it. It would be possible. Anyway, let's undo the fan. Hey, and here she is. She is free. So this fan is absolutely knackered. What I'm going to do, just to clean it really quickly, is run it under the tap. I know that sounds crazy, but it's buggered, so I'm going to run it under the tap, give it a quick clean, wash my hands, and then we'll come back and take a closer look at the specs and have a little look online and see what we can get. I have tapped this model number into the old interwebs here, and it reveals all of the specs I could want and more. So it turns out it's a 70mm fan, and there's a list of models here, mine being the top one, and you can see here that it's ball plus sleeve or sleeve bearing fan. Ours is a sleeve bearing, so right off the bat it's a sleeve bearing fan. And then yeah, we can see it's a 12-volt fan. It says that on the label anyway, but some more important notes here, probably looking at airflow, 13.56 CFM, and looking at noise, that gives us 13.56 CFM at 21.30 dBA. So I can look for a replacement fan that meets the spec of this airflow. Obviously similar static pressure, rated current and power as well, to get me the lowest possible noise. 21.3 dBA was not audible when the fan was in the enclosure and it was working properly. It only became audible when the fan wore out, and you know, it kind of makes sense. We're only going to get a certain number of hours out of this sleeve bearing fan, 24 hours a day, that is soon going to wear down. I'm surprised that we've had no noise for the last 12 years. So they're probably all way past their sell-by date, even though it's turned out to be a little bit of a ball ache to get the fan out. It's not so bad. Obviously, a lot of the time goes just looking to see how to dismantle something, so it'll be a quicker process to get the next fan out, you know, to do all 12, and it'll become quicker and quicker. However, I will want to clean the entire fixture as well while it's down, you know, clean all this crap, clean this, clean that. So it could take as much as maybe 90 minutes per light to get this done, but there's only 12 and it'll be worth it. I can do it over time. So as I said, batch of fixtures, and to be honest, it's pretty much my job, the upkeep of this stuff. And budgets, you know, put it this way, if all of these die or they become too loud and I have to turn them off, nobody's going to buy me any new ones anytime soon until the next like pot of money comes along. So keeping these up for some replacement fans is, you know, absolutely fine. Sorry that my talking is a bit crappy, guys. It is actually really late and I am feeling it. It has been about 3 weeks and I am back to looking at this LED PAR can. Now, one thing that's changed since the last clip is I have indeed cleaned the can. In fact, I've just spent the last half an hour doing so. It's not perfect, but it is much, much better than it was. But I'm very eager to get on to the next most exciting part, and the reason why this has been such a delay. I finally got my fan. So, all the way from China, I've got my replacement fan. Now I need some scissors or something. Whoa! It came out of the package. Right then, folks, here is the replacement 70mm fan. So here we have the new and here we have the old. Now, I ordered this guy from China, didn't take too long to come. I'm absolutely fine with the wait. If this turns out to be good, then I'll order a load more. So this is relatively close specification-wise to this guy, give or take a few things. So firstly, I wasn't really able to find a close spec fan with a 2-pin wire, well, 2-pin connector and 2 wires. This is a 3-pin fan, 3-pin PC fan, but obviously that doesn't make any difference to us in this application because we can just ignore the yellow wire. I did decide to get a brushless ball bearing fan as opposed to a sleeve bearing fan. So in theory, folks, even though this is a fairly cheap little fan, in theory we should get slightly longer life out of this guy, and prolonged use should be a little bit more better audibly than with the sleeve bearing fan, which will get louder over time. This guy should stay close to its rated 23.8 dBA, 23.8, something like that, 23.6. It was close enough to this for my liking anyway. So 12 volt 70mm DC fan, brushless, ball bearing. Yeah, it had similar static pressure, similar airflow, so I was pleased that I found that, and it didn't break the bank either. I think it was only 6-7 quid. So let's plug it in and see exactly what it does. I'm going to show you something that I did in a previous clip and I didn't realise until later on, so I didn't mention it in the video. As you guys can see, here's an example of another connector on the board. There's a blob of glue on this connector. There was a blob of glue on the fan connector also, and I just pulled it up and it ripped the whole connector off the board. But as you can see, the pins are still on the board. It's just ripped off the little plastic housing, so that doesn't make any difference whatsoever. Now, the polarity is positive on the inside, so we're looking to hang the 3-pin connector off of the other side, and this will stay in place. It will stay snugly in place, so we shouldn't have too much of a problem there. To be honest, if I really wanted to, I could simply put a blob of glue on the edge of that connector and glue it straight to the board, because there's plenty of room on the edge of the board here. I'll see how I feel about that, because maybe a bit of banging around it could come out, but to be perfectly honest, if I redo the cable tie especially, then there'll be no real cause for this to wiggle out. So anyway, let's just plug in the light and give the fan a quick go, see if it works. That'll be a good start. And there you have it. Shifting a good bit of air. Now I can hear it personally. Oops. But what is much louder is the dimmer. So something that the sleeve bearing fan didn't have, it's got a slight high-pitched whine, but it's spinning fairly quick, so it's actually a good amount of airflow there, folks. So yeah, that is the noise of the fan. Let's unplug the light. And as you can see, it works. So chuffed to bits about that. Basically, all that's left to do is reassemble it and see what the fan is like once the light is put back together, and see if we can hear it. Now, I told you that I cleaned the fixture. There's the grubby water to prove it, but one thing I didn't do was clean the inside of the can. So what we'll do is we'll reassemble the inner chassis and all of the components, and then we will clean that and slide it all back into the can. So we'll reassemble up to that point, test it once again, and then just before we do the final stuff, we'll give that a scrub. We have the bottom end of the unit back together. You guys can see that this fan cable is not with the rest of the loom because I cut it out, so I'm going to find a little cable tie, get it tied up there. That'll look nice. Let's see if it still works. There we have that. Cooling things. It sounds a bit loud. Hopefully it isn't. Yeah, got all the reflectors back on, properly aligned. It's actually a little bit disorientating kind of screwing this back together because it's round and you're trying to fit it in and line it up with the standoffs and that. It's quite interesting because it's not symmetrical as well. Now then, I got to do a really boring thing and clean the inside of the can, then we can properly put it back together. So here we have it, the LED PAR put back together completely, 100%, apart from the yoke, which is still in work. Went back together really nicely actually. You know, the inner carcass just slides into the outer shell and no complaints, just lines up perfectly. Obviously this is quite thin metal, so when screwing in the two different sides, the 3 screws here and the 3 screws here, you know, going mad on the tightening this side will pull the casing this way, pull the whole can, sort of buckle it inward this way so that you can't get these screws in. So it's a case of swapping back and forth until you get the desired tightness, and then you can feel that they're all indented and just how they should be. So yeah, the other thing is as well, putting it back together is getting it all lined up in such a way that the cable loom stays relative to where the lid needs to go on. So obviously the lid only goes on one way with the guide screw, well, the guide rivet here at the back that you put in the hole, and then the screw on this side, just like a normal PAR can. On a normal PAR can though, it's more often than not a sort of sprung kind of bolt that you can pull and then lift the back end of it off so that you don't need any tools. But you know, at the end of it, it's gone back together quite nicely. So, moment of truth, and I'm going to turn this light off because it's getting to me a little bit now. It's very hot in here. I'm going to plug it in and we're going to see how loud it is. And we're going to try and imagine this light up on the bar. Come on. Please be okay. I just don't know what to expect. Okay, that is louder than I would kind of like, unfortunately. So I've just been sat here sort of thinking about it, trying to sort of logically put this together in my head and get a general idea of whether this is loud or not, or whether it's, you know, too loud. And
I've come to the kind of obvious conclusion that I'm really not going to be able to judge it with the light sat on my desk here. You know, for starters, I'm like 10-15 inches away from this thing. When it's up on the bar, it's going to be feet away from people. But I have been right next to these cans, obviously, you know, while they're on, faffing with other stuff up on the bar, and I never remember hearing them. You know, I can hear this, I can tell, yeah, that piece of equipment is powered on. It's never been that obvious before. Just, if you listen out for it, just a gentle flow of air, but never this sort of motor noise from a fan that you can quite clearly hear, even when stepping a few feet away. But one thing that I'm clinging on to is the fact that I'm in a kind of nearly silent room now, and maybe when I get this back into the proper environment, it'll just blend into the hustle and bustle of the building, or just blend into the other noises that are in the auditorium, you know, the various plumbing noises and just the general, you know, just the general ambience of the room. I don't know, I'm thinking too much into it, folks, and the reason that I am is because obviously the main goal of this project was to reduce the noise of the can. Now, we have technically fixed the can because it is now not making a grinding, horrendous sound that you can hear all the way across the auditorium. It's now just making the noise that it should be making for this fan. I am a little disappointed because I made sure that the decibel rating of the fan that I ordered was as close as I could possibly get to the original fan. But then again, they're just spec sheets, you know, the measurement for fan noise. I mean, God, there must be so many different techniques that different companies measure their fans in terms of noise. Especially getting a fan from China, even though the other one came from China originally as well. It's hard to say. It's hard to say, folks. So yeah, what I'm going to do, I'm going to call it a day on this. I'm going to call it a success of a project, because on the bright side, we've completely cleaned the entire fixture, and I know how it comes apart and goes together, and I can see that it will be possible to do this to all of the lights without too much trouble, so that's fantastic, and that's made me really happy. My next step now is to take this back into work, stick the yoke back on, get it back up on the bar, plug it in, and see if it's an improvement. Well, not an improvement, just see what it's like in general. You guys know what I mean. See if it's, I don't know, see if it's suitable, and if I can so much as distinguish the fan noise from a normal standing position underneath the lighting bar, then it's no good, and we need to go back to the drawing board and find a different fan, or find some kind of way of slightly slowing down this fan, because to be perfectly honest, you know, spec sheets aside for just a minute, I know this is a slightly more powerful fan, but damn, this is moving a lot more air than the other one. I know the other one was on its way out, it was making a lot of noise, but just holding my hand in front of that one versus this one, there was one hell of an airflow difference. And I can actually feel, the airflow coming out the bottom of the can. And it doesn't need to be that crazy, you know, it's just, they're just 1 watt LEDs, and they're sitting on a huge hunk of metal anyway, and all of the metal is touching, so the heat will dissipate throughout the light. I don't know, could it go fanless? I really don't know, folks. I wouldn't be comfortable, if they weren't run 24 hours a day, then I'd be happy to do a little experiment on it on 1 or 2 fixtures, but we haven't had a dead LED to date, and they're over a decade old, so that is pretty damn good. You know, they're definitely 12 years old, no less than 12, so not a single dead LED on any of them is fantastic. And some of that may be to do with the slightly overbuilt / overspec'd cooling in these lights. We're going to call this a success, folks, and I don't really know what I'm going to do. It's not going to be worthy of a part 2, so I guess I'm leaving it on a bit of a cliffhanger, really, unless I hold off on this video and show you guys the noise in the venue. Yeah, I could do that. Okay, we're going to hold off on this one, folks. We're going to hold off, and we're going to take a little listen to it in its natural habitat. That's the best way to do it. Otherwise, it's just going to be a disappointing cliffhanger ending. I've got very, very good news, folks. This is the LED can in a sort of general location somewhere underneath the lighting bar. And check this out. Fan noise that I can hear when I'm next to it, but as soon as I walk away ever so slightly, it just blends into the natural sound of the room, which I was really hoping for. And in fact, I can hear one of those more clearly from standing here right next to the light. So that makes me very, very happy. I can now do all 12 with this fan. Sounds lovely and smooth as well. Brilliant. Good success. So it's been about a month since I recorded the majority of this video, and I have put the light that we fixed in this video back up on the rig, and it is performing wonderfully. When you stand directly underneath the bar and look up at the bar, you can hear the fan, but the same goes for all of the lights. I hadn't noticed before, but all 12 of them, you can hear all of them, some more than others. Basically what happened was, and it worked out quite well actually, on the front of house bar, which is the easiest bar to access, the front of house balcony bar, about a week after I fixed this can, I brought it into work and it was just sat there waiting to go back up, waiting until I had time to pop it back up. And within that space of time, one of the lights on the balcony bar died spectacularly, or the fan in the light just died spectacularly, and it was making one hell of a growl. So I went up there straight away, whipped it down, and this is what I heard. I plugged it in, and take a listen to this. I filmed a little clip. So as you can tell, that is absolutely horrendous. You could hear it all around the venue. Awful, awful, awful. God, this is going to take me forever to go around all 12. I've only done one, so yeah, I've actually got that other light sat here, ready to do. I'm not going to do all of them like this, one by one. I'm going to take a batch down soon and just spend a day and do the lot. Probably do them in work rather than transporting them all back home. You know, there's no real need for me to bring them home. It was just convenience this time once again, because I don't get to spend a lot of like additional kind of free time in work, and there's always stuff going on anyway, so it can be difficult. You know, we don't really have the luxury of a space of like a workshop or anything like that there. But anyway, yeah, what happened was I did a swap for swap, so I put the new one back on that bar. So the position that the original one in this video came from, there's still no light there, there's no fixture there. Presumably I'm going to put this one back in that position, but remember how I said at the beginning of the video that these lights run 24 hours a day? Basically, I had to cut the power the other day to both of the side bars for a completely different reason. When I powered them back up, another one over the far end started making a awful growling sound, so I've had to switch it off. So it's still on the bar, but I've unwired it from the junction box. It's unfortunately not one of the ones that had a plug and socket. It's wired. It's such a pain in the ass the way they did it. So yeah, that one's just now loose. So we are down to 10 cans currently, doing a wash of the curtains, so it's slightly uneven. But nothing that anyone would really notice. I just want to get them all up and running, all with fresh fans, and I want to do them relatively close together so that I don't have to keep track of when I did each one and they're all going to die at different times in the future. You know, I don't want to leave it like a year or whatever. I want to do it all in the same sort of 2-month window. So hopefully now January I'll get a good majority of them done. I won't be making another video on this because obviously I went through everything. I basically learnt as I went in this video about how the fixture disassembles and the best way to do things. I'll get quicker and quicker. After doing 12 I'll probably be a wizard inside these things. But yeah, thank you for being patient with me watching this whole video. It's been good fun to do something a little bit different. And if you guys have enjoyed this, I'll be sure to hopefully capture something similar in the future when I've got to do something else to something like this. It doesn't come around too often, but once in a blue moon, so it'd be good fun to get it on camera if this was a success. So thanks for watching, folks, and I'll see you all in the next video.